Hey everyone, it's Phil Hall of Westfair Communications, and thank you for joining us on this episode of the Westfair Video Conversations. Joining me today is Ronnie Ram. He's president and CEO of Inspira Outdoor, and he's in the business of outdoor advertising. And as I told Ronnie before we started recording this video, this is something I don't know anything about. So if my questions seem a little bit elementary, you'll know why in advance. So Ronnie, thanks for being with us today. What does outdoor advertising cover? Is this everything from highway billboards to the ads you see on the sides of buses and in train stations?
Absolutely. First, let me say thank you for having me on the podcast, on the show, on the video. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be with you. So outdoor advertising is sometimes called out of home, and it's a synonymous kind of way to look at it. In the industry, we call it out of home, and normally when we speak to clients, it's called outdoor. So everything that you see in advertising as you step out of the house, but generally it's in four categories. There's billboards, which we're all familiar with as we drive through highways. There's transit, which are buses, taxis, things like that, how I would take a train to somewhere. There's street furniture, which is things like bus shelters and phones and things like that. And then there's things like airports. Whenever we walk through an airport, you see different signage. Yeah, a lot, maybe too much, but we see a whole lot of it when we go to the airport. But that's really kind of the world of outdoor. And then there's a lot of specialty media like gas station advertising, advertising in movie theaters, CVS's, in gyms, but really everything outside the home.
Yeah, the gas station advertising, I know it's not new, but it still throws me. Every time I go to fill up and I put the nozzle into my fuel tank and I'm just standing there waiting and I suddenly hear a voice and it's like, who's speaking to me? And there's some smiling person on the screen telling me information about who knows what, anything from new technology to the weather and sports.
Right. Yeah. And it's all about, just as all advertising is, it's about who is your target audience and how do I reach them, right? So with that specific example, we'd go through the process of who do you want to reach? Well, I want to reach people that are, maybe it's a truck stops, maybe it's in Texas, maybe it's in California, no matter where it is. And then based on that, we would recommend which media format you would utilize, whether it be malls for some people, or billboards for commuters on the highway, or inside the trains for people that commute to the city, no matter if it's in New York or somewhere else.
Let me ask you, how efficient are highway billboard ads? I mean, I see them all the time when I'm driving up and down I-95. Sometimes they register with me, to be honest. Sometimes it's just, and I just keep going.
Sure, and not everything's going to register with every person driving, right? So you're going to subconsciously and consciously, you're going to be attracted to ads that kind of speak to you, no matter if it's an issue or something, right? So people that are into cars are always going to notice that billboard of a vehicle coming back. Right now, if you drive up and down 95, you're going to see a lot of healthcare, right? Because healthcare it's always been a big issue. It's a very, very big issue, right? And with everything that's happened through COVID now, a lot of hospitals are starting to get their funding back. They're starting to invest in a lot of advertising. So, but to answer your question, when you look at highway billboards, they can be looked at both as a mass reach. I'm not necessarily trying to reach Phil or Ronnie because we don't know where Phil lives or Ronnie lives. I live in Westchester, you live in Connecticut, but I am trying to reach someone that's traveling in that corridor in 95. But then again, I can also be very, very targeted. I may specifically want people that drive or live in that Sound Shore of Westchester area. And part of that process is, who are you trying to reach, right? And if you want 2 million impressions over and over again, I-95 is a really great place to be. If you only want to reach people in Portchester, then let's pick a billboard in the town of Portchester off highway.
I also noticed too that for me, the billboard ads that resonate the most are those that have the least amount of verbiage in them and have the most provocative photos. If I'm driving down I-95 and there's Jennifer Lopez at Foxwoods, it's like, oh, that's nice. Or if I'm going back the other way and there's a big picture of a hamburger at McDonald's or Dutchess, it's like, oh, that's a good idea. But I don't need tons of words behind that. I've seen a lot of billboards that do have what's an excess amount of verbiage, and I'm just not going to stop the car to read everything that's being said.
Absolutely. So the rule of thumb is 7 words or less, and the two greatest advertisers of that are Geico and McDonald's, right? And they happen to be in the top 10 outdoor advertising spenders in the entire world. Not New York, not the United States, but the entire world. And that is because they know what their message is. Very bright colors, high contrast, very few words. I don't need to everyone to understand. I just need any person driving by to understand, what am I selling? Is it a 99-cent cup of coffee? Is it saving 15 or, in 15 minutes or less? My message is very, very clear. So to your point, yes, it should be very, very clear, that message. Very few words.
Obviously, Inspira Outdoor has a lot of B2C clients, but can outdoor advertising also work for the B2B advertising campaign?
It can, absolutely. So yeah, B2C is, I'd say it's an easier conversation, and it's what outdoor advertising will apply to almost every B2C consumer, unless the media just doesn't physically exist in their area, their target audience. B2B use it different. So we do campaigns for, we did campaigns for Domino's where they're hiring. Drivers needed, CDL license on the New Jersey Turnpike, as an example. We did several thank you messages, during the pandemic, right, with banks and other companies. Either it's thank you to healthcare workers, or we are the bank, right? You see a lot of financial services, insurance, banks, and they're primarily B2B. That's where they make their money. They're not as interested in you or me opening up a checking account. They are interested in us opening up a business account. So you see a lot of big money is being spent by people advertising B2B, because that's what they want to convert. They want to convert people that are going to come because the lifetime value of that client is very high.
I would also imagine too that a lot of the major business conferences, when we were still having in-person business conferences, would be a great B2B opportunity for outdoor advertising for conventioneers and conference attendees, or coming in from all over the country or from overseas, going into airports and buses and through downtown areas in cities like Orlando or San Diego or New York City, which were big conference centers.
Absolutely. We had several conventions at the Javits. Unfortunately, they're going to be postponed. One was canceled, one postponed. We had another one in Las Vegas, which was exactly that, a B2B. So you had a conference targeting people that are in the software field, and you had somebody that sells to them, a B2B client of theirs that wanted to advertise to everybody as they come into the convention centers in Vegas to know that they're going to be there. So you're right. It's a great target. We execute those all over the country. Unfortunately, that's going to be limited for a little while, but it will come back.
Well, let me just ask you about how your business has been doing for the past few months. How has it been doing for the past few months in terms of existing clients and even getting new clients in?
Yeah, it's been tough right initially. So the initial shock of it, I remember, right, March 16th, everyone's let's pack up our laptops, let's take our voice over IP phones. Yes, they'll work, just plug it in as long as you have internet, and we need to regroup to be safe. And our job, first and foremost, was to let our clients know that we have their back. And how do we do that, right? So people that are advertising on Metro North, there's a big concern. Obviously, ridership is low, although it's growing. And we were able to pause people's campaigns. And that's something we do. That's our job as an agency, to look out for people and say, let's do that. Let's figure out how to do that. There's a lot of money that just isn't going to come back, right? We know it. Like you mentioned, people that are having shows at conventions, they're just not going to advertise if they can't have that show. We have people that advertise in malls that have closed for a certain amount of time. We have people, we sell advertisement in New York Sports Club, Lifetime Fitness. Those have all closed temporarily, right? So certainly we're going to be highly affected from a financial perspective. What we're focusing on is essentially continuing to be a great company. Luckily, we had a good balance sheet, meaning we run the company responsibly. And now it's a question of how do you move forward, right? So we shifted in a number of ways. We shifted by looking at geography. New York, and especially Westchester, is a big commuting city, right? A lot of Metro North, Long Island Railroad, subway. So we're focusing a lot more on selling billboards in New Jersey, in Texas, in California, in a lot of different areas, versus some other media, selling buses and street furniture, bus shelters versus commuter rail. But we're also, looking to build goodwill, right? Having a lot more of those conversations with clients to give them ideas. There are a lot of clients that say, wow, without our advertising, they're in the same boat. what can we do? Well, let's shift from this to this. So we have so many clients that shifted from commuter rail, like a Metro North or Long Island Rail or New Jersey Transit, and have purchased billboards. And you know what? The good thing is they were introduced to a new media format that they really love. And they love that, and they may maintain that, but for the time being, they're doing that. But for the most part, Metro North is such a strong, targeted way to advertise that it's really not a question of if it'll come back. It's just how quickly it'll come back, because people are anxious to advertise to those clientele.
I should also just mention for our viewers who are not in the New York metro area, Metro North is our train service, which connects New York City with the suburbs in New York State and Connecticut. So people may not know what Metro North is.
Absolutely, and thank you for that.
But also, I was out at the Fairfield, Connecticut Metro North station the other week, and it was sort of weird because there were posters up for Broadway shows that have closed months ago and are not going to probably be coming back in January, if at all. How do you know when it's the right time to take down the poster? I don't know. I'm assuming that's not your client who left the old Broadway poster. But when do you know that an outdoor advertisement has run its course?
Well, I mean, in that case, that's run its course, right? So the MTA awards contracts to large agencies, and I buy from those agencies when I want to place a client. So if a client wants to be in, let's say, Stamford, that campaign that I put together may include Metro North, billboards, bus shelters, maybe ads at the Stamford Town Center or one of the new malls. However, there is a cost to those companies to replace those ads. And now, unfortunately, due to COVID, a lot of them have not been replaced. And that's just unfortunately part of the function of the business. Now, normally, what part of the value we bring to the client is we bring several value propositions. One of them is the alignment, right? We're aligned with the client and we're going to sell them the media that makes sense for them. And two is we'll know where there's maybe more demand or less demand, and we'll be able to negotiate based on that. So in the case of Metro North right now, yes, I mean, the ridership is low, but you can also get things at a lower rate. So there could be very smart advertisers that say, yes, ridership is at 20%. I may not buy it for 20 cents on the dollar, but I'm going to buy it at a significant enough discount and maybe buy more posters at a station to make a greater impression on the clients that are there. So to answer your question, we're not in control of when things get taken down. However, if it's our client and something is dated copy, meaning it's over, like an event, we would make the request on behalf of that client to please remove that. And that request would be honored because of our relationships with the system and the agencies that manage that system.
You mentioned airports a few minutes ago. For me, airports tend to be numbing experiences. Yep. And I'm just so in a state of tumult getting through TSA and having my ticket bags and what, that I may not be paying attention to whatever advertiser is on television or in billboards throughout the airport. What do you do to connect with people like me who are just so overloaded and overwhelmed going through the airport, so they may not actually be recognizing somebody's trying to get their attention via advertising?
Sure. So the first thing is understanding what the benefit of outdoors, meaning what outdoor is designed to do, right? And the primary thing it's supposed to do first, besides connecting with an audience, is substantially grow awareness, right? Because there is digital outdoor, which is getting more and more attractive to people and more popular, but traditional outdoor, let's say static, meaning a physical vinyl piece of paper, cannot be fast forwarded and skipped. And that's why it's so powerful, right? So that highway billboard, you may not be looking up at it, but if you see it, you can't fast forward it, you can't skip it, you can't delete it. And that's the power of outdoor. So the greatest scenario is people do outdoor in concert with other media formats, right? When somebody sees your ad in outdoor, and then they see it in print, and then they listen to it on the radio, and then they see it on social, the power, it's not 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 3, or 1 + 1 + 1. You can keep kind of having that formula to the point that outdoor can increase the effectiveness of a lot of other media formats by 200 or 300%. So the question about the airport is, first is it the right thing for you, right? So what is the right for your business may not be right for someone. So in the airport, you're going to see a lot of big brands. And those big brands are typically not going to try to reach you only in one location at the airport. They're going to spend 50,000, 100,000, sometimes even more per month to reach a mass audience. So let's just say if it's a spirit company, a vodka company, a rum company, they're going to spend a lot of money to try to reach that person in that airport. And the ideal is you're going to see them over and over again. And what we like personally as a company, and a lot of other people that do what we do like, is dwell time. If I can choose to provide an advertising for you, Phil, where you're going through security, or depending on the airport, or when you're sitting at your gate, those decisions are going to be based on, which airport and what product it is. At security, maybe it's a JFK and you're looking at this gigantic 50-foot banner, and you're not going to be looking at your phone because you're going to be paying attention to the line, and every 2 minutes you're going to have to move, and that might be right for you. If you're a business traveler, I may want you at the gate where you have to go on Wi-Fi, or there's a charging station. There may be a sign next to that charging station. So everything really has to be for that particular advertiser and the audience that they're trying to reach.
Okay, let me give a question to you, and this probably might be one of the sillier questions you've ever been asked. When I was a little boy, one of the things I used to love when I would go to the beach with my family, and I grew up in the New York City area, so we'd either go to Bell Harbor or we'd go down to the Atlantic City, the Jersey coastline, and there would be a biplane flying over the beach with a large advertising flag on it. And me, little 4-year-old me didn't remember what the ad was, but I remember seeing the plane and the flag going by. And about a month ago, I'm here in Connecticut, and I was doing my dishes in my kitchen. I looked out the window, and sure enough, there was a biplane with this large flag going by. And for me, this is the most ultimate stop and look type of advertisement. Unfortunately, I couldn't see from my kitchen what was being done, but whoever would be along the shoreline here in Connecticut couldn't miss it. I don't know, is this something that your agency does, or is this something that you would encourage some companies or restaurants or venues to look into?
Yeah, I mean, we do it all, right? So we sell that. There's a digital billboard on a boat in Miami, believe it or not, that drives up and down specific areas, stops for 10 minutes at, in front of South Beach, at certain piers. And it's all based on, and you have similar things in Atlantic City. You have the planes, you have boats, you have a lot of different things. It's all based on, how do you reach the person, and can you reach them, right? If you want to go to certain beaches, there's no media you can sell them. And the people are sitting there, and yes, a lot of people these days are on their phones, but a lot of people aren't. And all of a sudden, like, you hear a noise, and then all of a sudden you see a banner after a plane. And again, I think Geico is such a good example because they do all of this stuff. But it all comes down to, how do I get people's attention? How do I reach them in a place that they're not accustomed to being reached? Same with the person. You're in a train when you're commuting, no matter if you're in Chicago, in Boston, New York, or even Los Angeles, which actually has a subway system. And what do you see in front of you? You see ads when you're sitting there for 45 minutes or an hour. And that's why advertising in trains has been so powerful. Why do people like malls? Well, maybe you can target the demographic, but also they find that a lot of people in malls are a little more relaxed. They're walking around, they may sit down with their phone, with their coffee, and they look up at an ad, and it gives them exposure to a particular brand. Maybe it tells a story that they haven't heard before.
Well, I think for me, at least, for advertising underground, I've been to London many, many times, and I always love going into the London Underground with the advertisements on the escalators going down to the and in the tube station itself, these large ads which cover the tube station. Is there anything like that here in the U.S.?
So there's not, it's interesting. Though our largest cities sometimes are behind because the cost of improving infrastructure is so great. But everything's being converted, right? So in New York City in particular, it's going to be more digital signage. So not what you're describing. I know what you're referring to. Europe is definitely ahead of us, as is Asia, for a lot of advertising and media. Where we're going is a lot more digital, converting inside transit centers and very, very large billboards, to the likes of which we haven't seen before, right? We're talking monstrous, high quality, Times Square level size billboards. in a lot of different areas. And you're seeing those developed over and over again. And same with our airports. Our
Yeah.
airports are, a lot of that is being converted.
You have to excuse me. I forgot to turn off my phone before doing the interview, but I guess in a way it's a good prop, because
Yes.
today we're so distracted with everything, and especially if the phone rings, the initial reaction is to go, as opposed to
Yes.
speaking. So, as an advertising expert, this really must be an extraordinary challenge for you to get people to put down their phones and to actually stop and look at what you're putting up on walls or billboards or on flags being carried by biplanes, or on, as you say, the boats down in Miami.
So the stats actually tell you, right? And there's a corporation called the Outdoor Advertising Association. So it's a separate independent organization, and they coordinate a lot of the studies from Nielsen and everything else. The amount of activity that comes from outdoor is huge. 35 to 45% of people sharing it when it's relevant to them will either share a photo, take a photo of an ad,
Yeah.
visit a website. Again, it's all about what you want, what that message is, and what the action is taken. So we do so much business with companies looking to advertise in Times Square only so people could take photos or they can use it on social media. And this happens all the time, right? I mean, we are doing a campaign for a company, a rum company out of Miami, in a few weeks in Times Square. And they're going to do something to just really grow the brand. And that one is actually a 4-week campaign, a 28-day campaign. But their goal is not only to grow the brand, because Times Square is not just tourists. A lot of people work in that area now. But the power of taking those images, we have people calling us, they want to buy a billboard just so they can take their photo in front of the billboard. And you see a lot of this happening. But the amount of people that go and visit a website because they've seen it outdoor is tremendously high. And the cost of advertising outdoor is probably one of the greatest surprises, meaning it's a lot more affordable than people think. And that is one of the pleasures you have when you speak to a client about it and say, wow, I had no idea I can afford a billboard in this area, or an ad on the train, or something like that.
Well, we've come to the end of this episode, but if people wanted to continue the conversation with you, how can they get in touch with you?
So they can visit InspiraOutdoor.com. That's InspiraOutdoor.com. And I just want to, I'd be remiss if I didn't just say thank you to, again, one of our big things, and there's a lot of photos, and we took a couple billboards in Port Chester and a lot of other areas that you've seen. Thank you to the healthcare workers, essential workers, and everyone that's done everything, during this time to help the communities. It was very, very important to us. My sister is a nurse, and she dealt with a lot of COVID patients. And I think it's very important to our clients and the people we work with. So it was a big part of what we've been doing to try to give back. And I hope that people continue and don't forget what everybody is going through right now, especially people, food insecurity. And while New York is doing a great job, it's not over. It's not over for us or the rest of the country. So please stay vigilant, and let's all do our parts in keeping people safe.
Ronnie Ram, thank you so much for being on today's episode. And folks, we'll see you again next week. So thanks for joining us.
Bill, thank you so much. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.